Hello, and thanks for watching another Sunday case study. This week we're going to do Nicolas Cage. Hello, Nick. We're going to do your palm right there. I'm borrowing Tom Cruise's Head and Shoulders. Maybe one day we'll do you, Tom. But all week this week I've been looking at pictures of Nick's palm and obsessing over what that tells me and how he's changed over time as a person, and it's been absolutely fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to this one. First of all, I just want to go over last week's reading and the things I got right and wrong or missed out. Let's see. So I received feedback near enough straight away about this person's palm, and it was very positive. So I described his character successfully, reportedly. So that's cool. The one big mystery that really kind of bugged me, actually, I didn't really get to the root of, was exactly what he did as far as a career, because I knew that he had a career with an audience. I knew that he was musically inclined because of the sign. So we've got a well-developed tip of Apollo. We've got some sun lines reaching from the heart line here. We've got, and this is a big giveaway, the Venus mount, which it's well developed, and it branches right over into the unconscious side of the palm, an appreciation for creative arts, and also a sense of rhythm here. And you can see by just how dark that part of the palm, it's, and also here as well, Neptune, this is maintaining an audience as well. So, we've got a lot of little signs here. I knew that this person was musically inclined, but I didn't know exactly what sort of musical career this person had. And if I'd just sort of taken a step back and again looked at what I discovered in the first place, we've got an air hand. This is someone who's continually exploring, and I did mention that he was a bit of an adventurer. New ideas, concepts, bouncing off these ideas, changing ideas, and also looking, here's another clue. We've got the headline, the lifeline joined for an unusual length of time. This is someone who's quite shy. So we had this contradicting factor of someone, with his open space fingers and a bit of an adventurer, confidence in them, in themselves, but low sort of self-esteem. So we've got these kind of contradictory things. They desire an audience. They're musically inclined. So what is it? They want a singer. That's not, a singer would have a longer Jupiter and Mercury, and we didn't see that here. So again, this is sort of someone who is quite shy, but gifted, has an audience. I just couldn't quite get it. And then I received the feedback, they're a DJ. It all made sense. All made perfect sense all of a sudden. So a lot to be learned here, I suppose. Go back to the drawing board. You've got your clues. Just take notes as to what you've got. Write it down. Look at your evidence in a different way, rather than continuing down that same thought process. Take a step back and look at the data you've got, and sort of brainstorm it, spider diagram it, however you like. Look at it from a different angle. Analyze it in a different angle, and the pieces of the puzzle should more or less fall together. So that's what I've learned from that, and it was a fascinating read. I really enjoyed doing this one, and the more I look at a palm, the more I learn. So with this week's reading, I decided I would look at this person's palm, this famous person's palm. I decided I would look at Nick's palms all week and keep coming back to that drawing board, and I it's worked, because I've drawn conclusions. Things have fallen into place, and I've realized certain things about, I've learned about palmistry as I've gone on as well, and that's the whole point of all this. It's a learning process for me. It's a great way to reflect. These case studies are working for me anyway, And also I hope that, it provides some entertainment as well. That's the whole purpose of this. So even today, on this last day of looking at Nic's palms and referring back to my books, I've picked up on a few things as well. So the first thing I do whenever I look at someone's palm is, or both their hands, is look at what stands out. What stands out to me, and why? Why does that matter? It's always worthy of investigating things that stand out on the palm, because there'll be reasons for this. It tells its own story. There will be a compensation for it elsewhere in the palm, and once you start looking for these, I suppose it helps you begin in the right place, and then it helps you find a second clue and then cross-reference, and you start to draw a conclusion, paint a picture of who the person is and what's happening with them. And I keep looking up because I'm just trying to find my words. So the first thing I notice about Nic Cage's palm here, and I wonder if you've already if you've already picked up on it. Let's have a look here. It is the Jupiter finger in general. It's long, and the tip of it in particular leans towards the other attributes in the palm, so communication, expression, artistic creative skill, and hard work and moral ethics, and planning. So what does that mean? Well, this person, obviously at the time this picture was taken, which was about 20 odd years ago, I think, anyway. I mean, look at him, he's very young, or younger. And I think it's around the time he was doing that film where he was riding around on a motorbike with a flaming skull head. So that's about 20 years ago. I can't remember what the film is. So what I was expecting to see was actually a relatively short-ish Jupiter finger, because I was expecting to see an inferiority complex, just so common with Hollywood A-list actors, men in particular. Not seeing that here. Seeing a great deal of confidence in his thoughts and ambitions and decisions. He's quite an authoritative figure. He's probably, it's quite a high set Jupiter mount as well, which exaggerates all things Jupiterian. So what we're actually seeing is someone who is capable and confident in his own self-development, his ideas. What this means, a Jupiter finger which turns in at the tip, is someone who is individualistic. So his ideas, and people are going to listen to him, matter, and they're different, and he's going to roll with it. And it doesn't really matter what anyone else says. He's self-assured, which is also evident by the long Mercury finger as well, which is needed really to help persuade people, pull off these potentially very unorthodox and wacky ideas, to persuade people these are actually good ideas. So the roles that he was picking up, the ideas that he had about certain ways to do things in his job, were normally they wouldn't have been accepted perhaps, but his ability to persuade and charm those around him to do it, and his authoritative decision-making skills and ambition and ego also were a driving factor as well, and enabled these things to occur. So that's really what the fingers are telling us here. Also, we've got a very sort of spatulate Apollo here, and I've checked out his other hand as well. Whoops, over here. Oh, we're getting there. it's spatulate too, and it's spatulate in this day and age as well. As I say, this is 20 years old, so that's never changed. And what that really tells us is it's also fairly long tip of Apollo as well. It's a well pronounced, well developed tip of Apollo. He's certainly got an eye and a feel for things creative and artistic, but he's had to work hard at his artistic skill, and that's what that spatula tip means. And here is again. Grr. Check out Jupiter finger here. Again, you can see that tip it's really sort of crooked at the tip there of Jupiter, and a very long Mercury. This is someone who is his ideas are very different, and he goes against the grain, which in Hollywood, I'm a bit of a movie buff, and really all I know about Nic Cage is the stuff I've seen in his films. You don't really get a reward. There's no reward in going against the grain in Hollywood. You get kind of kicked to the dirt, and you can't really pick your career back up after again. But Nic Cage seems to have made a career out of being different, going against the grain. So what's evident? I'll look at my head here. There we go. So what's evident about this is Nic Cage's palm now, or at least now-ish, and if you look here, what's changed about his palm now? I mean, the fingers are straighter, they're thicker. Jupiter is noticeably shorter. We know this now because they're almost the same length as Apollo. It's a long Apollo finger. Certainly reputation, glory, and audience matter more than other things. Showboating, he's a show-off he's a natural show-off. His Apollo is still spatulate, but it's interesting that Apollo and Jupiter are almost level, but Jupiter is shorter. Things are much more aligned now that he's older. He's more conservative in his nature. Mercury is also shorter than it was. It doesn't quite reach, or it's not level, or it doesn't reach further than the first tip of Apollo, whereas it did 20 or so years ago, which you can see there. And Jupiter is long there as well. So his fingers becoming slightly thicker over time shows that he has his appetite for life has heightened. The appetite for all the sort of pleasures in life has heightened. And the shortness of the little finger, now that he's developed a shorter, so his little finger becoming shorter is certainly partly due to him not needing or feeling the need to get his message across anymore. He once had an overwhelming desire to reach out to the world, to express and communicate his ambition and his message, and he's no longer feeling that way. Also, it could be said that the little finger shows us a lot about the how a person feels about the opposite sex, and how he's feeling about the opposite sex as well. The fingers also show us, we've got Apollo here and Saturn also leaning in on themselves as well. So as I said, you've got Saturn here, Father Time, Kronos. It's the inevitability of hard work, the inevitability of time passing, and with that, comes the responsibility of having to work to pay the bills, and therefore, planning is needed. That's also tied in with morality and ethics as well, partly because Saturn lies in between, directly in between um, the conscious and unconscious parts of the palm as well. So there's often a slight sort of battle of the egos taking place in a person's psyche. So what we have here is stability relying on his environment, his home life. And quite often you see when a person has their two middle fingers leaning towards each other, they're thinking not about themselves, they're thinking about family and what they do in order to, what they need to do in order to keep family life stable. They're thinking about others and they're not thinking about themselves. Often you see two middle fingers that are very close together, no gap in between, and that's a person who's found themselves stuck in a rut because there's no room for themselves. They're purely acting and working for the need of others. And sometimes you see that with people, that have to go to work very young to look after their siblings, or they have a lot of children themselves, or they're the main provider in their family, and there's just no way out. But that's not Nic Cage. It's just an example, an untimely example. So what this really tells us about Nic is that he is a family man, and I've seen this throughout all the pictures of his palms at any age. He is actually a great dad, I think. He's certainly a provider, and I think part of the reason that comes from this is, and there's several signs here, and this is tying back in to what I noticed immediately about his palm, and that is this gap here. It's a severe gorge, if you like, and that's quite a dramatic word, isn't it? But it's worthwhile using because just look at, it looks like a sort of pizza slice. It looks like someone's hacked at, just taken a blade and just come straight down here and hacked away at his, in between his fingers here. This divide is quite literally that. So Jupiter, being authority, often represents the father. Nicolas Cage, I believe, has what looks like here some sort of a strange relationship with a male figure in his life, and that's likely his dad. And so this ambition line we have here, which is often an unrecognized ambition, unless it reaches higher up the palm, is likely his ambition to become a decent father out of not what he feels was a decent father, having a decent father himself. And also, here's something else I noticed. Notice the way the first and second phalanges are slightly wasted. You don't see it as much on, this is a more recent picture of Nic Cage's palm. You see it more with an older picture. I mean, you can even see it here with this sort of poor quality image here. But if you look, there's a slight wasting at the first and second phalanges here on all fingers, and that represents the feeling of abandonment when he was young, um, abandonment issues, separation anxiety, perhaps. It's the feeling of not. It's often a lack of parentage during latency, or at least the feeling of not having your parents around enough when you were a child. Now that also falls, so we're touching from one thing to another here. We've got this evidence that, circumstantial evidence anyway, of a lack of a father figure, and then we've got what the second and that wasting in between first and second phalanges of fingers there are showing us. as well that ties in with that, a feeling of abandonment when young. That also ties in with, as I say, this ambition line, which could well be wishing to be a better father, giving back what you didn't have when you were young. But also, check out this image here, and I found this absolutely fascinating. Look at Nic's career line and the way it wraps around his thumb. It's almost like someone's gotten some fishing wire and they're pressing it against the palm. Look at the indent here. It's crazy. And you don't really see this all that often. It's a career line that stems this low down and wraps right under Venus like this, so deep. It indicates someone whose career was predetermined for them by their parents. Is often a career line that stems from the Venus mount or low down on the lifeline near the Venus mount. Is someone working in the family business. This is someone's parents who have decided already they're going to work in the family business. But to have it this low down, this person's career was already predetermined. And so when I looked at Nic's palm initially, I sort of thought, well, I was expecting to see, similar to what I saw last week, a desire to have a career with an audience, as most actors do, a career line stemming from Luna. But we don't see that really with Nic, and that is because his career line comes around like this. You can't see it so well in this image. It's because his career line, it heads straight upwards down a central path of the palm, the most common place for people's career. That's because he's never known anything different. Most actors fall into the role. They receive training, they have the idea, they follow their ambition and their desire, and through perseverance and skill and knowing the right people, it happens for them. That's normally how it works. But for Nic Cage, he's never known anything different, really. It's not to say that he's had it on a platter, because, as I say, he's worked hard to achieve the skill that he has, because he does have creative skill, he does have a voice, and as I say, he's made a career out of being individualistic, which certainly shows still in his palm today. But I just thought it was absolutely fascinating that his career, he sees his job as just hard work. Well, this is his job. There isn't anything else. There's no other option for him. And that's because he just hasn't known anything different. So I just thought that was absolutely fascinating. His spatula Apollo fingers also show someone who likes to see tangible results after their efforts. It shows someone who actually likes to get involved physically with creatively, which is not actually all that common with actors. So it might be that he has a career, a hobby at home where he likes to work with wood or something quite sort of physical, where he sees the sort of a physical product, a tangible product at the end of it, and that's quite common with people with a sort of spatula Apollo here. But also, I think that falls in line with him making so many films. It's just a few isn't enough, 50 isn't enough, 100 even. I'm not sure how many he's made now, but it's around that mark, I'm sure. And also, I was kind of expecting to see an inferiority complex. I don't see it, because I know that he reached some acclaim when he was very young and has never quite reached that level again. So I was kind of, with everything else with just how common it is. With just how common it is in Hollywood to see these inferiority complexes, that the next level of success is never quite enough. Um, I was expecting to see that with Nic Cage, but I don't see that, which is really interesting. He's self-assured, but it's like his message, his ambition, which he hasn't quite realized up until very recently, um, is it's to have the world understand who he is, if that makes sense. And that's certainly what his hand shows us. So interestingly, in this image here, we see his mercury line, or health line, or liver line. It travels up towards the Mercury Mount, as it often does, from his lifeline in a straight arc like this. That's quite rare. Most of the time it's down here, or it's just a bit bitty, overlapped or broken, or it's just in sort of segments, or it starts here, or there's a bit of a curve. Here's straight, it's deep, and it reaches right up to Mercury from not the lifeline, sorry, from the fate line. That's really interesting. It's known in Russia as ironically the mark of the vampire, and with him playing Dracula very recently, I've not seen it yet, but it looks great. It's taken very seriously in Russia in Russian palmistry. They don't mess around. They've got something like 30 odd names for vampires. It's not something they joke about. It's a very serious part of their culture. But protection from vampires is how they see this this marking. It actually stops at the heart line and changes slightly there. But what this generally means is someone that's lives a relatively lucky life, ignoring the superstitious element. It generally endows the person with luck. And I've also noticed what looks like, as the heart line reaches up in between Saturn and Jupiter, which is an excellent place for the heart line to end or begin, depending on which way you prefer to read the heart line. It shows, firstly, a heart line that I believe begins between Jupiter and Saturn is someone who has an innate correct sense of morals, a good moral compass. But to have this little ring here, which is an almost complete ring of Solomon, shows it's generally believed to be endows the person with some sort of insight, some insight of forthcomings, foresight. Whichever way you want to look at it, certainly someone with the ability to intuitively, instinctively know what the right thing to do is. And this might well have, which ties in with the luck that he certainly has here, and ties in with how he's managed to stay in the limelight, stay in work after a lot of questionable decisions or ways that he's chosen to play certain roles. I think a lot of other people would have sort of fallen by the wayside by now in Hollywood. But as I say, Nic Cage seems to have always remained consistently in making films. He'll go from making something that's really low budget low budget after low budget after low budget, and then just, somehow landing a role that's huge. And most actors, once they kind of do enough low budgets, well, obviously that's it. So, I think these signs here do tie in with how he's managed to stay in the limelight, stay successful, and continue putting out that message that's important to him, and that is, of who he is as an actor, as a person. Also, what we see here on Venus are some lovely little vertical strokes here, some upward strokes. These are friends, these are great friends. But these are a sense of achievement and grace in and a sense of art achieved, a sense of an artistic, graceful skills achieved. So that's a really positive sign. So early on in Nic's career, we see this sort of intervention from Neptune. Well, actually, yeah, this is Neptune. And that's around, wow, it's very early on. It's probably around late teens. And Neptune is the ability to, there's so much that needs to be discovered about Neptune. So this is Neptune, and this is Pluto, and all this here is Luna, and then you've got Upper Mars here. So Neptune, and particularly Pluto, are hugely forgotten about and undiscovered areas of palmistry. But what we do know about Neptune is it's the ability to captivate and keep an audience. So people with developed amounts of Neptune have the ability to publicly speak and captivate large groups of people. So with this sort of this influence from Neptune here, reaching up and influencing the fate line at this age, he's drawing on his ability to captivate an audience at a very young age, at the age of 18-ish, certainly late teens. And then you've got around the age of, 20-ish, 21? No. Mid-20s, sorry. Yeah, mid-20s, because this is more around 21. That's about 25-ish. Maybe 20, maybe 24, where his Mercury line touches the fate line. This is more or less where he begins his career, and you can see just from the shadows where his success, for example, because this is his success line, which goes beyond his heart line, which is quite unusual. You generally see it in very famous and wealthy people. You can see by the shadows, his success stems from Luna. So success stems from having an audience and from creative, artistic abilities that he draws on. And also his career after mid-30s, certainly, there's a shift in the way he changes his way of thinking about his career at this time. He's more centered around the importance of what other people are thinking, and his work kind of ethics change at this time. But it's from so here is his Mercury line touching his fate line, and below that, as I say, sort of early 20s is where his success really kicks off from his fate line and reaches up towards Apollo here, the place of stability and enjoyment, joy, fun, the sun in a person's life, money, success, fame, adoration, glory, reputation, all of that. So that's really interesting. And when it touches his headline at the that pinnacle age of 35, and that is around that age for Nick, saying his first name like I know him, we see that his success also changes direction. So here's his career. His career carries on again here, but it changes direction. It's less in a place of Jupiter and more in a place of Saturn. So it's taken a slight change in direction. So it's less about what he wants to do and more about what he has to do. And also his success seems to, and it's very difficult from this poor quality image, but it seems to indicate that his success, he's not as successful after this time. So his success and his career really changed direction until the age of, I mean, it's not, dead, it's still there, but his success really kicks off again actually in his late 50s, mid to late 50s, which is nowish. And we can see more around success in this picture here. We're back to Tom and Nick. We can see it more clearly here, I suppose. And we've got two sun lines. Wonderful. What's not to love about two sun lines? It's interesting they both kind of come from this Mercury line here. And the Mercury line is another fairly undiscovered part of palmistry. A lot around the Mercury line is tied in with intuition and instinct, and we've already touched on a lot of that in Nick's palm. So it's interesting that both success lines kind of seem to stem from this Mercury line, which also touches his fate line. It's all tied in here. It's all connected. So we've got here, this is his sense of stability and joy and happiness in life. And this is, it's more money focused because it's closer to Saturn. So this line, to reiterate and add, is his reputation, because this means a lot to him. And this is more around money, which is stability, and also means a lot to him because it means that he can provide for his family, which he would do just about anything for. So going back to his career, mid to late 50s, here it is. So it's here, and then it takes a different direction, works its way up here and takes a different direction up here. And this huge change in direction, this is hard work. This is doing all these kind of B movies I'm talking about, doing stuff he doesn't really want to do to pay the bills. And then when his career takes a completely different changes over to something, as I say, this is Saturn. This is a place of hard work, planning, just doing the right thing, doing what you need to do in order to pay the bills, to put food on the table and all that jazz. So his career was headed up this way, and then it stops and takes a turn up here. Massive change in his mid to late 50s, huge change. And that shows that his career is headed towards more of a path of Jupiter. It's more of what he wants to do. It's more of his choices and his decisions. He's now receiving roles that he wants to do. He's now much more in demand again. His work is better. People are enjoying the work he's doing more. recent roles he's done receiving great acclaim again. He's reaching the level that he reached when he was very young, that level that he's never quite been able to achieve. So he's coming full circle now, and his career ends abruptly. His lifeline ends abruptly. Can't quite see it in this image. Let's have a look. So each image shows clarity in different ways, and even in this early image here, you can see that we've got a travel line here, and it coincides, it points towards where his lifeline ends. His Mercury line, remember we've talked about how his Mercury line is tied in with intuition, it's tied in with his success. We've talked about other areas of his palm where he's quite intuitive. It points towards this exact, all things are pointing towards the same incident or time in his life. Even at this age in his life, so it sort of seems sort of quite fated. And other areas I've not talked about, which tie in with intuition, is his Pluto. It's a very well developed Pluto. You can see here in this image as well, Neptune is very well developed. Whatever your thoughts on however talented Nic Cage is as an actor, he has this ability to keep people talking about him, to stay in the limelight, to keep people captivated. So Pluto is like a secondary lunar mount. It's another reserve of a deeper, more unconscious reserve of creative ideas. And again, it's a very undiscovered, unexplored part of palmistry, but it's well developed, and again, it adds to this intuitive ability. He's instinctive. He's also open-minded. We've got a very large gap between head and heart line, and there are other indications here all over his palm which represent someone who is very open about talking about just about anything. He's a great conversationalist. He's probably very open when it comes to talking about sex, and he's a great lover of physical. He appreciates physical form, and sex certainly means a lot more to him in his relationships. He needs a physical relationship. That needs to be a consistent constant. It needs to be a constant in any relationship that he's in. He's certainly an emotional guy, and he probably demands quite a lot of reassurance from those he's close to when he's feeling low, when times are rough. He's probably quite a needy person. At the same time, he's probably very generous emotionally as well. So he's only expecting what he's giving, really. So to sum up here, we've got a very open, warm person who had and still has obviously ambitions in being an excellent father. I think that was an unrecognised ambition until fairly recently, and I'm sure he's achieved that. And also in getting his message across as to who he is, what kind of an actor he is, and this ambition as well to reach the acclaim that he did when he was young. I think he's always felt a need to reach that again. And funnily enough, I think if he had reached that early on and maintained that kind of same level, I think he would have developed an inferiority complex. But because he's always had a clear goal, he's never quite... I think he's always had enough self-assurance as well. He's never actually developed that. So that's interesting. But I think now he's much more... now his fingers are much straighter. They're much thicker. He's much more... he's less inclined to go against the grain. those closest to him are more. He's more. His priorities are now more around keeping a close-knit circle of friends and family and communicating with them. It's not. He doesn't care so much about. It sort of seems like now he's calmed down more. He's more able to do what he's always wanted to achieve. Basically, he was trying too hard. Now that he's not trying as hard, he's able to achieve. That's what it sort of seems like. But the indications here are that, and I wouldn't normally predict this sort of thing. With a private reading, I would never say when someone's going to die, because palmistry is a healing practice. It's guidance, it's counselling. Hippocrates, 500 BC odd, he was a healer. He was a palmist as well, and from the Hippocratic oath, it's from him that we take that oath. So palmistry is, it's tied in with all that. I'm never going to tell someone directly when they're going to die, because it's not helpful, it's not healing, it's hurtful, it's damaging. However, I know Nic Cage is never going to see this. I hope you don't, Nick, or any of his family. But I am willing to, on this occasion, make a bit of a stab in the dark as to when Nick will die, because there are lots of signs here that point towards it. So, as I say, his success, his intuition, they're tied in with each other. Here is the intuition, or Mercury line. It touches the lifeline, is joined in with his success. Okay, add that again. We also then have a travel line that reaches around the side of his palm, and it points exactly in this same, that's a terrible arrow, in the same direction. And then we've got this abrupt end to the career as well. So I'm thinking that Nick does achieve what he wants to in life. And initially, when I read his over this last week, I've been reading his palms. I didn't know anything about him. I still don't really, because I've still not been willing to look until recording this. So after I finish recording this, I'm going to look him up. I thought he was a bit older. That's one thing I have looked up, is his age. I had to, because signs are pointing towards him dying quite suddenly around the age of 62, maybe 61, 62. We've got a couple of years of Nic Cage left, it seems. And I think he'll die working on a film. I think he'll die abroad. And I think he will die a legend. I think the last film he works on will probably be his best. So he will go full circle. I think he'll earn awards in death. And I think that it's bittersweet, because he will achieve all that he has wanted to achieve. And I think he's probably lived a great life. So there we have it. I think that's all I can really say about Nic Cage. I've been studying long and hard here, and I hope this all kind of has been insightful. And if you've got any questions, please drop them in the comments. If you've got any suggestions as to who you want me to look at next week, please also drop them in the comments as well. So at the time of this reading, Nic Cage is he's 59, so I'm predicting 61-ish. Maybe it could be anywhere between 60 to 62, in all honesty, that I think we lose a legend. So there we go. Thank you for watching. And I'm sorry, Nick, if you are watching this, please don't sue me. Although I am trying here to utilize palmistry in the most um, sensible and responsible way and logical way, there is some room for divination, and in this instance, it's not particularly helpful if the person in question finds out about this. But who the hell am I? This is on YouTube. It's just entertainment. Please don't sue me. Although this is my prediction, it's just my opinion. So there we go. If anyone else wants to know when they're going to die, too bad, I'm not going to tell you. So thanks for watching, and please join me next Sunday for another exciting case study. Like and subscribe and all that jazz.